Part 122. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1212. Chapter 1212, Can the disciples of the Vajra sect compare with the dignified heavy sword pavilion? Let me tell you, although Miss Wu is also an outer disciple, she is from Chongjian Pavilion, this is it. The ordinary disciple raised his thumb vigorously and said with joy, I said, can you clearly see what kind of cultivation he has? Zhao Kong looked over from a distance, and saw that slender figure surrounded by 3 layers of disciples from the Vajra sect, and with his little strength, how could he clearly see other people's cultivation, so he shook his head. I'm sorry you can't tell. To tell you the truth, he is at the 3rd level of Suanhui realm. In our Vajra sect, he is definitely an elite disciple among the inner disciples. Tisk tisk, the disciples of the sect are just different. They are so beautiful. I don't know who will be lucky enough to be her partner in dual cultivation in the future. Ordinary disciples looked at Wu Menying's back, giggling and daydreaming. Zhao Kong became anxious after hearing this, and immediately ran to shout to Lu Sheng and the others no. Then Jin Shenyang called a relative from the 3rd level of the Suanhui realm to be a helper. We have to tell boss Ye quickly. But even Su Chen was there at the scene. There was no one around, so where could they look for it? In the middle of the martial arts arena, there was Jin Shenyang, dressed in powerful attire, holding a long knife, sitting cross-legged on the ground, closing his eyes and meditating. Next to her, Wu Menying was dressed in a snow-white dress, sitting on a chair specially arranged by the Vajra section. She glanced at the fanatical Vajra sect disciples around her, the disdain in her eyes flashed, and she said to Jin Shenyang, a Qi martial realm, you're just a disciple. With your strength, you don't need to take it so seriously. Jin Shenyang opened his eyes and glanced at his cousin. There was no closeness in his eyes as ordinary people thought. He said coldly, of course I know what kind of strength he has. Cousin, you don't have to worry about this. Seeing that Wu Menying was about to get angry, Jin Shengtai, who had been standing behind him, hurriedly came over to smooth things over and said, cousin, you don't know something. That Su Chen just killed a master of the Suanhui realm yesterday. Beat him to coma, his strength is very terrifying. To be honest, Jin Shengtai really didn't want to say this. Even if he broke his head, he would never have imagined that in just 3 months, Su Chen's strength had grown so terrifyingly. It's a monster. Now he regrets messing with that evil star. After secretly knocking on Jin Shenyang, Jin Shengtai's confidence in his brother was shaken for the first time. My brother, can you still beat that evil star? If he loses. Jin Shengtai shuddered violently. Oh! Wu Menying's eyes lit up slightly for the first time, but that was all, and she said, what is the strength of your Suanhui realm, uncle? 1st level of Suanhui realm, Jin Shengtai said quickly. Ah! No wonder. Wu Menying's slightly bright eyes calmed down again, she glanced at Jin Shenyang and said, cousin, it will be difficult for you to defeat a monk at the 1st level of the Suanhui realm, right? Jin Shenyang seemed as if he hadn't heard anything. He just closed his eyes and adjusted his breath, trying to adjust his condition to the best. If this little guy named Su Chen is only at the 8th level of the Qi martial realm as you said, and can defeat a 1st level Suanhui realm monk from the Vajra sect at this stage, then he can barely get started in our heavy sword pavilion. Wu Menying emphasized the 3 words Chongjian Pavilion. Jin Shenyang snorted and ignored him. Ever since he entered the Vajra gate, his cousin had often ridiculed him and told everyone about how their Chongjian Pavilion was. And her cousin has such bad taste that he came to the small sect of King Kong sect. Moreover, Jin Shenyang has always been arrogant, so the relationship between the siblings is not so harmonious. Jin Shengtai tried his best to squeeze out his fat face. With what he thought was the brightest smile, he flattered his cousin, your cultivation level is so high and you are a disciple of the heavy sword pavilion. If the time comes, cousin, you must help us. Um, Jin Shenyang opened his eyes and stared sharply at his younger brother. The latter shrank his neck and hid behind Wu Menying, not daring to speak any more. If Wu Menying's attitude towards Jin Shenyang is disdain, then what will happen to the fat and pig-like pair? Jin Shengtai, who is mediocre in talent, greedy and lustful, just ignored it. She came here today because she contacted the Vajra sect because of some matters with the sect, and took a look at what her good cousin had become. Now it seems, it didn't seem too optimistic, but this was exactly what she expected. A disciple at the 8th level of the Qi martial realm scared her cousin like this. Although that disciple defeated an uncle at the 1st level of the Suanhui realm, they were 1st level Suanhui realm monks from the Vajra section. They were placed in their heavy sword pavilion, and there were a lot of Kaiwu realm disciples who could fight beyond the level, but they couldn't even get into her eyes. Moreover, the few around them had slightly powerful auras. Some of the inner disciples of the Vajra sect were all at the 1st or 2nd level of the Suanhui realm. Occasionally, there was someone who was at the 3rd level of the Suanhui realm like her, but she didn't take it seriously. After all, the difference between the big sect and the small sect, the gap is as big as clouds and mud. Can the 3rd level Suanhui realm disciples of the Vajra sect compare with her majestic heavy sword pavilion? Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1213. Chapter 1213. She is very strong. Defeat Zhang Sushan with one move. Brother Wen, that girl from Chongjian Pavilion seems quite proud. Should we put a stop to her majesty? At the outermost edge of the martial arts arena, someone said among a group of inner disciples of the Vajra sect who were watching with cold eyes. The boy named Brother Wen was the most powerful young man among the inner disciples. His face was indifferent and he said softly, "She, very powerful." Brother Wen's words surprised everyone. They looked at the young man in astonishment, and then at the young woman in the field who seemed as proud as a crane among the chickens. Their eyes were full of shock. Even the inner disciples were shocked. Lian Shengwen and Brother Wen of elite existence both said that the disciple from Chongjian Pavilion was very strong, so how strong could she be? Are all the disciples of the sect so unfathomable? By the way, why hasn't the new disciple named Suchen arrived yet? What time is this? Lian Shengwen glanced with slightly closed eyes and said coldly, "He's here." There was a slight commotion in the crowd. Jin Shenyang looked over and narrowed his eyes instantly. He saw a slightly thin figure walking slowly. Although he didn't have much momentum, under the gaze of so many pairs of eyes, he looked calm. A sense of confidence naturally emanates from him. Etc. Jin Shenjiang's heart suddenly shook, a faint spiritual light emitted from his eyes, and he stared at the young man. Kaiwu is at the 9th level. Jin Shenjiang's eyes flashed slightly as he looked at the young man who was gradually approaching. He couldn't help but straighten his waist, and the spiritual power in his body continued to surge. Although he did not admit that he was afraid of this young man, his subconscious and body felt like he was facing a formidable enemy. An honest conditioned reflex. Outside the crowd, Lian Shengwen frowned slightly and asked, "Is this the young man named Suchen? Didn't the rumors say that he was talented at the 8th level of martial arts? The companions beside me are also full of doubts. Is it because those Kaiwu realm disciples are blind? They are obviously at the 9th level of Kaiwu, but they think they are at the 8th level of Kaiwu? Or are these Kaiwu disciples deliberately making lies in order to exaggerate the facts?" But, Lian Shengwen looked at the slightly thin young man and said with a faint smile, "Whether he is at the 8th or 9th level of Qi martial arts, being able to defeat a 1st level Xian martial realm monk in the Qi martial realm shows that this kid's fighting talent is pretty good. Although, that Li Yukai was forced to reach the Suanhui realm by taking pills. Although Li Yukai has some intimidating power among Qi martial realm disciples, few people among his Xian martial realm colleagues think highly of him. The reason is actually very simple. In a world where personal dignity and rights are based on one's own martial arts cultivation, a person can barely become a Suanwi realm monk by relying on pills, and his cultivation potential has been exhausted, and his cultivation level no longer makes any progress. Such a person is destined to be at the bottom among warriors of the same level. Anyone who has advanced to the Suanwi realm based on his own talent is more than 1.5 stars stronger than Li Yukai. Therefore, although Suchan defeated Li Yukai and caused quite a stir among the Qi martial realm disciples, few among the real Xian martial realm disciples would take this matter seriously. The reason is that Li Yukai squeezed into the Suanwi realm by taking drugs, and his strength is too poor. The companion next to him nodded and said this boy named Suchan should be able to squeeze into the top 5 outer disciples, but this has nothing to do with us. What we should really be wary of, or pay attention to, are the top 3 among the outer disciples. Lian Shengwen smiled non-committally. Seeing Lian Shengwen's expression, his companion smiled bitterly and said, "Senior brother is extremely powerful, so naturally he doesn't take these low-level disciples seriously. But ordinary people like us inner disciples have to care about these things. Senior brother, do you know who is ranked number 1 among the outer disciples in this class?" Lian Shengwen put away his smile. Although he was usually obsessed with cultivation and didn't care much about these gossips, he still heard Zhang Sushan's name and nodded immediately. His companion sighed and continued, "This is Zhang Sushan. Some time ago, he was alone. One person killed 3 Suanwi realm early stage cultivators in a row, and all of them defeated the enemy with one move. You must know that those 3 Suanwi realm monks are not people with empty reputations like Li Yukai. They are all ruthless gangsters who lick blood with their swords all the time. They were killed by Zhang Sushan with one sword. Tisk tisk, with such terrifying combat power, even we have to be careful. If we wait for him to break through to the Suanwi realm, I'm afraid." Having said this, my companion looked at Lian Shengwen and saw that the latter still looked careless, so he had to shake his head secretly and stop wasting any more words. In fact, with his middle-class appearance, he is basically satisfied to be able to become an inner disciple of the Vajra section. After all, he is always content with what he has. However, he has always known that Lian Shengwen is a person who doesn't care on the surface, but he cares deeply about rankings in his heart. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1214. Chapter 1214. My knife is already thirsty. That Zhang Sushan was still in the Qi martial realm, and his combat power was so amazing. If he waits for one day to successfully advance to the Suanwi realm, I am afraid that Lian Shengwen's current status among the top 20 inner disciples will also be in danger. The words he just said were not actually meant for himself, but as a subtle reminder to his senior brother Lian. But judging from the latter's appearance, he probably wouldn't understand the meaning behind his words. Or even if he heard it, the arrogant senior brother Lian wouldn't take it seriously. When Suchan walked into the arena, the commotion around him became even greater. Zhao Kong led Lu Sheng and a group of Fuhuling disciples to squeeze in, gathered around Suchan, and said in surprise, "Boss, why do I feel that your cultivation is even more unfathomable?" He found that everyone was full of expressions. With a look of surprise, Suchan said calmly, "I'm lucky, I happened to make a breakthrough." Suchan said modestly, but everyone was shocked. Yesterday, he had reached the 8th level of Qi martial realm, but in just one night, he had broken through to the 9th level of Qi martial arts. When he was at the 8th level of Kaiwu, he beat Li Yukai of the Suanwi realm to the ground. Now that he is at the 9th level of Kaiwu, isn't his strength even more terrifying? Thinking of this, everyone looked at Jin Shenyang on the other side of the martial arts arena with some sympathy. After all, although Jin Shenyang ranks 10th among the outer disciples, and has good cultivation and combat prowess, compared with Suchen, who has been baptized by 3 battles yesterday, he seems a little less confident. Feeling the strange look on the crowd's face, Jin Shenjiang's mouth twitched slightly and he couldn't help but snort. However, he has been conceded since he was a child that his talents are not inferior to ordinary people. Except for a few geniuses, such as his cousin Wu Menying, who is as arrogant as a peacock sitting next to him, and that monster Jiang Sushan. Apart from these real geniuses, Jin Shenyang has not yet. Who have you been afraid of? Wasn't it just that he defeated Li Yukai, who relied on taking drugs to break through to the Suanhui realm? I remember that Jin Shenyang, came and went in the cold and summer, practicing Sanjiu in winter and Sanfu in summer. I never slacked off in my cultivation. I even visited the dangerous place Juying Valley several times, and fell into the state of life and death several times. The secret skill passed down from the family, Kuang longsword technique, has even reached the realm of Dzogchen. A 1-star high-level monster with 3 eyes and a ferocious tiger, now under my sword, it can no longer hold on even half a stick of incense and will be killed by me. It is said that Suchen killed a top existence among the 1-star high-level monsters, the flaming stone cow, but who has seen it with his own eyes? Cowhide is not an exaggeration. Suchen could defeat Li Yukai, who was at the first level of the Suanhui realm, but could Li Yukai defeat a flaming stone bull? Joke. If Li Yukai had such strength, would he still lose to a mere new disciple of the 8th level of Kaiwu? After turning around these thoughts, Jin Shenjiang's eyes regained the unstoppable intensity of the past, and he stood taller and taller towards Suchen's figure. Bring it on. Suchen, let's fight. My knife is already thirsty. You have no shame in losing to me. Others didn't know how many thoughts Jin Shenyang had passed through at this moment. Even Jin Shengtai, who looked at Suchen's frightened expression, didn't notice his brother's expression. Only Wu Menying, who had been sitting on the Taishi chair aside, with an elegant posture and an indifferent expression, could understand the thoughts of her cousin, who had been competitive since childhood, with just a glance. Suddenly, an inexplicable smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was unclear whether it was sarcasm or sympathy. Regarding this duel, Suchen didn't want to spend too much time and energy on it. For him, Jin Shenyang has lost his role in tempering himself. Moreover, his cultivation had just reached the 9th level of Kaiwu. At this time, he should be eating monster meat to prepare for breaking through the 2nd level of Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu. Therefore, Suchen walked to the martial arts field in a few steps and said directly to Jin Shenyang, "Let's start." Jin Shenyang snorted coldly, and the figure that was sitting cross-legged on the ground immediately jumped up with just a slight exertion of force. Fell into the field, neatly, and immediately won a round of applause from the surroundings. Zhao Kong and others were unconvinced and shouted loudly, "Come on, boss. Boss will win. There are not many good people named Jin, boss will kick them out." Wu Menying, who didn't want to sit quietly aside, heard this, suddenly looking at Zhao Kong and the others. A pair of beautiful eyes shone with cold light, which frightened Zhao Kong and the others so much that they shivered and became silent, not daring to say anything anymore. "Oh my God! This woman looks as beautiful as a fairy, but her eyes are so scary." Zhao Kong lowered his head vigorously, feeling extremely frightened in his heart. For Wu Menying, although she didn't think highly of the Jin Shenyang brothers, they were still related to her, and they were not just cats and dogs that could be scolded. When Wu Menying showed off her power, Suchen glanced here. In fact, he had noticed this woman from the beginning, but she had experienced big storms, and her chest was rugged, so she remained calm. I heard from Zhao Kong that this woman was a King Kong from Chongjian Pavilion. It's no wonder that a disciple of the sect's office received such treatment. The Vajra sect even sent someone to serve her. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1215. Chapter 1215, the third form of the Mad Dragon Sword Technique, Long Ao Jushin. The martial arts arena was 10 feet wide, and the only person who could give him a sense of danger, except for an inner disciple from the same sect in the far corner, was this woman dressed very differently from the Vajra disciples. Moreover, based on Suchen's intuition, this woman's strength is probably still higher than that of the inner disciple of the Vajra sect. But today's duel, as long as this woman doesn't interfere, Suchen is confident that it can be resolved quickly. If this woman insists on interfering, then things will be a bit tricky. But even if this woman wants to intervene, he is not afraid. After all, this is the territory of the Vajra section. No matter how noble the people of the Changjian Pavilion are, they cannot openly and maliciously attack a disciple of the sect on the territory of the Vajra sect, right? Jin Shenyang, who was standing opposite Suchen, was very angry at this time. He's about to duel with me, but he still dares to distract him. You don't take me seriously. The angry Jin Shenyang originally planned not to hold back in this duel, but now he is biting his cheeks, glaring at the opponent fiercely, making a cry, and unsheathing his sword. How dare you look down on me like this when you are so proud of your achievements? Let me teach you now how to be a qualified warrior. The first move of the Mad Dragon Sword Technique, angrily slashing the earth. On the martial arts field, the sword was as bright as a horse, and it hurt people's eyes. It only hit Suchen in an instant. Fast. Too fast. Everyone present, most of the people, didn't see the trajectory of Jin Shenjiang's sword clearly. They didn't expect that Jin Shenyang, who was famous for his sharp swords half a year ago, was now faster and more ruthless. How should Suchen receive such a fast sword? Well done. Suchen's eyes widened. He did not draw out his sword. Instead, he turned his body slightly and used a pair of fleshy palms to hit the blade of the sword. Keng. The long sword was swung away by a huge force and he almost lost his hand. Jin Shenyang was shocked. Then, he immediately flew back, widening the distance between the two. Such power is indeed a bit tricky. Jin Shenyang stared at Suchen with his eyes. He changed the posture of holding the knife with one hand to both hands, adjusted his breath, and gathered all his spiritual power again. On the edge of the martial arts field, Wu Mengying glanced at Suchen with a slightly surprised look. It's interesting to be able to see the trajectory of the knife clearly. Although she has always looked down on this cousin, even she has to admit that at Jin Shenjiang's level of cultivation, even she can only reach this level at most. However, the young man in front of her is not only being able to clearly see the trajectory of the sharp knife, and also find the weak point of Jin Shenjiang's move, and take the opportunity to swing away the knife. I have to say that this young man still has some strength. Good. A shout suddenly came from outside the stadium. Everyone looked around and saw Zhao Kang applauding so hard among a group of Fuhuling disciples that his palms almost turned red. Seeing the disdainful looks from around him, Zhao Kanghun didn't care, but instead he raised his head with some complacency. To be honest, Zhao Kang couldn't react at all to the knife strike just now, let alone see it clearly. But all he needed to know was that Suchen stood still and did not draw his weapon. And Jin Shenyang on the opposite side slashed at him with a knife, but did not hurt anyone, but retreated first. Such a simple and clear result is enough to show that the boss of our family is obviously stronger than the one named Jin. And he is much stronger. Jin Shengtai couldn't sit still anymore, he jumped up and yelled at Zhao Kang. He didn't dare to scold Suchen, but that didn't mean he didn't dare to scold Zhao Kang, who was worse than him. Jin Shengtai shook off the layers of fat and looked ferocious. Screamed to his brother, "Brother! Don't hold back, use your strongest sword to kill him." The result of the first tentative fight between the two people in the field made Jin Shengtai sitting aside a little nervous. He didn't dare to think about what would happen if Jin Shenyang lost, fearing that he would be beaten by that let the evil star named Ye peel off his skin. Jin Shengtai shuddered violently, and the fat all over his body rippled. He kept encouraging Jin Shenyang to work hard with all his strength. "Shut up," Jin Shenyang glared at him fiercely. Su Chen, who was standing opposite, smiled calmly and said, "I advise you to listen to your brother and use your strongest sword, otherwise, you will not have another chance." Snored. Extremely arrogant. However, you can only smile now. Jin Shenjiang's momentum gradually increased, and when it reached its peak, he swept his sword towards the opponent. The second move of the Kuanglong sword technique, crossing the river. However, the sword had just been struck, and Jin Shenyang not only did not retract the sword, but then he struck out with a stronger sword, the third style of the Mad Dragon sword technique, Long Ao Jushin. At this moment, the Dzogchen sword technique of the Mad Dragon sword technique fully demonstrated its horror. The two swords merged into one knife followed another, with almost no gaps in between, splitting layers of air along the way, making a sharp whistling sound, as if there was a black dragon roaring under the nine netherworld. Su Chen stood upright, his fists stretched out slowly and quickly. It was as if what he was lifting was not a pair of arms, but a pair of huge cauldrons, which gave people an extremely heavy feeling. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1216. Chapter 1216 Shocked Wu Menying. Lost to madness. This contradictory move made everyone extremely uncomfortable and dizzy. Wu Menying, who was watching the battle, suddenly stood up and stared at Su Chen's move, showing a serious expression for the first time. Her red lips parted slightly, and she exclaimed in a low voice, "What's the situation of lifting a light weight like a heavy weight?" If Su Chen heard her words, he would definitely admire that this woman's knowledge is indeed extraordinary, and she is indeed a disciple of the sect. Except for Wu Menying, everyone present, including Lian Shengwen, did not notice the mystery of Su Chen's move, but felt it was a little weird. This is because different people have different understandings. A person's strong cultivation does not mean that his understanding must be strong. And the understanding of martial arts by people with strong understanding is by no means comparable to that of ordinary people. It takes an ordinary person 2 or 3 years to master a martial art to get a rough idea of it, but for a person with a strong understanding, it may take a year or even a few months to master it. Su Chen is the kind of person with strong understanding, and he is not ordinary strong. With ordinary yellow-level martial arts in his hands, in less than a month, he can comprehend the state of Dzogchen, and even go one step further to reach the state of transformation. And Wu Menying is also such a genius. She could tell at a glance that Su Chen's move seemed ordinary, but the artistic conception contained in it was extremely powerful. If her prediction was correct, Su Chen's move should be divided into 2 realms, one is to lift a heavy weight as if it were light, and the other is to lift a light weight as if it were heavy. Moreover, it is more difficult to understand the realm of lifting a light weight as if it were a heavy weight than lifting a heavy weight as if it were a light weight. At least among her contemporaries in Changjian Pavilion, it was rare to see anyone who could understand the importance of lifting something light and weighing it heavy. Not to mention those low-level disciples in the Qi martial realm. This person's understanding of martial arts is extraordinary. Wu Menying calmed down the exclamation in her heart and sat down slowly. However, when she looked at Su Chen again, her eyes were different from before. There seemed to be light flashing in her bright eyes, like a crane that had been among the chickens and saw its own kind for the first time. Xiaojin lost. Wu Menying said lightly, with a smile on her lips, as if Jin Shenyang lost and she was very happy. What? Jin Shenyang, who had been engrossed in the competition in the martial arts arena, heard his cousin's vague murmur and asked subconsciously. Wu Menying shook her head slightly. There is no common discourse between geniuses and mediocre people. But fortunately, in King Kong, in a small sect like this, I have met a person with such excellent understanding. Should I recommend it to the elders of the sect? Or, touch his bottom first? Thinking of this, Wu Menying revealed a rare look in her beautiful eyes. There was a hint of cunning, and a strong fighting spirit. The fact was just as Wu Menying said. Suchen clapped his palms twice in a row, and only heard kang, kang, two sounds, like the sound of metal and stone. Jin Shenjiang's extremely powerful sword was not only easily resolved, but even the long sword was shaken into 3 pieces and fell to the ground. Jin Shenyang stood stunned, staring straight at the ground. The broken knife seemed to have been drained of its soul. Still better, Suchen stood up with his fists closed and said calmly. This is impossible, this is not true. This is not true. Suchen, you are not worthy of defeating me. You do not deserve. Ah! Jin Shenjiang's eyes were red. He had never thought highly of his opponent, and he really couldn't accept the fact that he was defeated or crushed by Suchen. Like a wounded wolf, he roared and rushed towards him, attacking with both fists indiscriminately. While fighting back, he roared inarticulately. I practice Sanjiu in winter and Sanfu in summer. The realm of great perfection of Mad Dragon sword technique. Who can defeat me? No one can. Ah! Kill you. Wu Menying frowned slightly. Her cousin suddenly lost her temper, which made her feel ashamed. Xiaojin, that's enough. She shouted in a low voice. However, Jin Shenyang, who was in madness, not only did not stop when he heard his cousin's voice, but became even more crazy. You never look down on me. Ha ha ha. It doesn't matter, one day I, Jin Shenyang, will stand at the pinnacle of martial arts and be proud of the world. Wahahaha, ugh. The laughter suddenly stopped. Jin Shenyang suddenly flew backwards, vomited several mouthfuls of blood in mid-air, and fell to the ground. Suchen put away his fists, looked at the fainted Jin Shenyang, and shook his head slightly in his heart, slightly frustrated, just crazy. With such a mind, let alone pursuing the peak of martial arts, I am afraid that after being hit by this, it will be difficult to break through even the Suanhui realm. Without looking at Jin Shenyang again, Suchen took a deep breath, turned around slowly, and was about to leave. Go. Etc. Wu Menying suddenly stood up and called out to Suchen. In the eyes of others, Wu Menying's behavior was very strange. She did not pay attention to her cousin who was lying on the ground vomiting blood and was unconscious. Instead, she called out to Suchen, the young man who injured her cousin, and took him with him. With a strange look, he looked up and down and said, "What you just used was a matter of lightness but heaviness." Suchen suddenly turned around, feeling a little surprised. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1217. Chapter 1217, Poaching. Warm invitation. It was 2 days ago that he realized the importance of being light and heavy. It was something he accidentally realized after killing the flaming stone cow with 3 punches. But I only have a glimpse of this realm, and I have not yet reached the realm of small success. Unexpectedly, this female disciple of the heavy sword pavilion would notice her. Suchen had to look at her with admiration. However, Suchen didn't know that Wu Menying was more interested in him. If you can realize such a state in the Qi martial realm, your understanding is not low even if you are placed in our heavy sword pavilion. Wu Menying took 2 steps closer, and a faint fragrance of virginity passed into Suchen's nose, which made her feel relaxed and happy. I wonder if junior brother Su is interested in joining our heavy sword pavilion. As soon as Wu Menying said these words, there was an uproar around her. Presumptuous. After the noisy crowd, Lian Shengguan walked out with an angry look on his face. Of all the people present, he was the strongest. As an inner disciple of the Vajra sect, Facing other sects openly poaching their own sect, naturally he couldn't tolerate, even if she, Wu Menying, is a disciple of a sect like Changjian Pavilion. Moreover, even a fool can see at this time that Suchen's strength is extraordinary. If such a talent is poached by others in front of her, I am afraid that even as an inner disciple of the sect, he will rarely be punished by the elders. Junior brother Su is a member of our Vajra sect, and this place belongs to our Vajra section. Fellow Daoist Wu is just like Meng Lang. Wu Menying Liu raised her eyebrows slightly, turned her head and glanced at Lian Shengwen, and said, Junior brother Su has excellent understanding, and it would be unworthy of him to be placed in your Vajra section. If he can join our heavy sword pavilion, he will be able to fully explore his potential. His future achievements will definitely be much higher than if he stayed in the small Vajra sect. Lian Shengwen clenched his fists and stared at her. The latter looked completely indifferent, which made Lian Shengwen even more angry. But even Lian Shengwen had to admit that Wu Menying's words were indeed true. She has the confidence. Compared with Jinggang sect, Changjian Pavilion is the leading sect in the whole county. Jinggang sect is just a small sect under Changjian Pavilion. Usually, they have to look at Changjian Pavilion's face to act, let alone the two. There are 8,000 disciples in Changjian Pavilion, and the Qi martial realm disciples are only registered disciples. The outer disciples alone cannot enter unless they are in the Suanhui realm, let alone the inner sect disciples of Changjian Pavilion. They are all true martial arts. He is a powerful person. It can be said that any inner disciple who comes out of Changjian Pavilion will be able to overwhelm the elders of the various small sects below. This is his strength, and it is unacceptable to refuse. Lian Shengwen knows that his strength is not comparable to Wu Menying, so he wants to. It was impossible to overpower her with his momentum, so he could only say to Suchen, Junior brother Su, loyalty, justice, and integrity are the most important thing in life. Since you joined my sect, although the sect has not treated you specially, it has not been overly unfair either. And even if you join the heavy sword pavilion, you will still have the stain of being shameless and betraying the sect on your back. I believe that even the heavy sword pavilion will not pay much attention to such a person. Faced with Lian Shengwen's pressing questions, Suchen shook his head and smiled calmly. When did I say I wanted to join another sect? I stayed well in the Diamond Gate. Why should I transfer to the heavy sword pavilion? Thanks to Miss Wu for her kindness, Suchen took it heartily. Wu Menying obviously did not expect that Suchen would reject her like this. She was slightly stunned and said seriously, Junior brother Su, please think about it. The Changjian Pavilion is not on the same level as the Vajra sect, regardless of the level of the techniques or the quantity and quality of the elixirs distributed. A cultivator's own talent is very important, but the resources available to him are also very important. Even for most people, the latter is far more important than the former. In fact, you don't have to be so eager to answer me. I will stay at the Vajra Gate for another day and give me an answer at the latest the day after tomorrow. After saying that, Wu Menying turned around and left, leaving everyone with a pretty back view. Junior brother Su, it is good for you to have such determination. Believe me, if the sect knows that you have such strength, one day, it will treat you accordingly. Lian Shengwen is still persuading Suchen. It's no wonder that Wu Menying's invitation is too tempting. As a disciple of a small sect, who doesn't want to enter a big sect like Changjian Pavilion? If it were him, Lian Shengwen, he would. I'm a little excited. After all, this is a world where strength is the most important, and if you have strength, you have everything. Senior brother Lian doesn't have to worry. Suchen said, what Ye said will be done. Although Changjian Pavilion is a major sect, in Ye's eyes, it is nothing more than that. Suchen's words calmed Lian Shengwen's worries a lot, and the latter nodded repeatedly. However, Suchen's last sentence seemed a bit harsh in everyone's ears. What does it mean that a sect like Changjian Pavilion is nothing more than this? If Chongjian Pavilion is nothing more than this, if a sect like Jianj cannot catch your eye, Suchen, then what is the Diamond Sect? Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1218. Chapter 1218 Rewards doubled. A chance to enter the Phantom Cave. However, Suchen had already made a promise not to transfer to the Heavy Sword Pavilion, and Lian Shengguan didn't care about these details. He patted the newly rising outer disciple, chatted for a few words, and left. At this time, only Jin Shenyang was left on the martial arts field. Jin Shengtai twisted his fat buttocks, struggled to climb onto the martial arts field, helped Jin Shenyang up, and shouted, "Brother, what's wrong with you with tears and runny nose?" Hearing Jin Shengtai's cries like killing a pig, Suchen suddenly remembered something. He turned around and jumped into the martial arts arena. The Dark Star sword was unsheathed with a clang sound, and the tip of the sword was pointed directly at the center of Jin Shengtai's eyebrows. The bloody smell emitted by the Dark Star sword made the latter feel cold all over his body, and his neck suddenly shrank. You, what are you going to do? It's my brother who is competing with you, not me. You can't kill me. The sect has an order and it is a crime to massacre fellow disciples. Looking at Jin Shengtai who was shaking like chaff, Suchen shouted coldly, "Have you ever remembered the spiritual stone you owe me?" Spirit stone. Jin Shengtai's fat head was a little unable to turn. He was stunned for a long time before he remembered that such a thing happened. A flattering smile immediately appeared on his fat, shiny face. "Master, yeah, I remember." Remembered? Yes, it's 200 spirit stones, right? I'll give it to you right now, I'll give it to you right now. You must not kill me. Jin Shengtai was also frightened. Suchen, who had defeated his brother Jin Shenyang, who was always invincible in his heart, was like a demon in his eyes. No matter what, he would never dare to mess with this man again. Come on. Suchen slapped his face with his sword, and the latter immediately fell to the ground in fright, kowtowing like a fool. It used to be 200 spiritual stones, but after so long, the interest has increased a lot, and 200 is not enough. Ah, Jin Shengtai raised his head, looked up at Suchen, and said cautiously, "Then, how much do you think is enough?" "At least 300. Suchen stretched out 3 fingers. "Okay," Jin Shengtai gritted his teeth, took out a storage bag from his body, and paid Suchen 300 spiritual stones on the spot. He was so distressed that he didn't want any of them. Suchen had achieved his goal and left with satisfaction. He was left stunned. The crowd, as well as Jin Shengtai, who was heartbroken and sad, hugged his brother and cried to the sky. Not only should this man not be messed with, but he would also have to avoid him whenever he encountered him in the future. Not only was he strong, he would also be able to show off his skills in full view of the public. Blatant robbery. How shameless. Woohoo. The next day, the elders and disciples of the Vajra sect sent Wu Menying and her party off. After all, they were from the Chongjian Pavilion. The Vajra sect looked up to others, so naturally they had to be more considerate. "Elders, please send them here. I will report this matter to the sect, so don't worry." Wu Menying signaled to the Vajra sect members that there was no need to send any more gifts. With a flash from her waist, a pink 3-foot-long silk satin suddenly flew up and swelled in the wind, hanging in the air like a horse. Wu Menying raised her eyes and looked behind everyone, as expected. The young man did not come. However, she only took a look. Since the other party did not appreciate it, she no longer took her previous invitation to Suchen into the Heavy Sword Pavilion to heart. She considered herself a genius in cultivation since she was a child, so she only had eyes for him. Only geniuses can catch her eye. The invitation to Suchen was just a whim when she saw the same kind of people. Since the other party didn't appreciate it, forget it. It would be his loss not to come. He insisted on the so-called sect friendship and gave up a person who could enjoy more. In Wu Mengying's view, it is undoubtedly an extremely stupid move to gain more cultivation resources and have better promotion prospects. With a tap of her feet, Wu Mengying stepped onto the magic weapon Red Ling, and looked graceful in the envious eyes of the Vajra sect disciples. Going away. In the crowd of farewells, the great elder said thoughtfully, the disciple named Wu from Chongjian Pavilion just now was waiting for a disciple named Su Chen. Yesterday, Wu Mengying's public poaching of Vajra sect disciples was widely spread among the Vajra sect, and even the elders had heard about it. I think, it should be a disciple respectfully replied. The great elder caressed his beard and said, Songqing, you are in charge of the monthly distribution of spiritual stones to the outer disciples. Remember to take good care of this disciple named Su Chen in the future. For a disciple who can withstand the temptation of a sect like Chongjian Pavilion without being tempted, our sect must show some expression to avoid chilling the hearts of the disciples below. What the elder said is, disciple, do it now. The great elder raised his eyes and looked in the direction where Wu Mengying and others were leaving, his eyes a little complicated. The Chongjian Pavilion is the only big sect within 1,000 miles. It has thousands of disciples, and all of them are outstanding among them. Although our Vajra sect is not as good as the Heavy Sword Pavilion, we must do our best to cultivate talented disciples. If my memory is correct, half a year later it should be the time for the outer disciples competition, right? Yes. Following the instructions, in this outer disciple competition, the rewards for the top 10 will be doubled, and each person will be rewarded with 500 spiritual stones. 10-second transformation elixirs. Entering the medium stone chamber of the spiritual array, the spiritual stone fee is waived. In addition, the top 3 will not only be able to choose any Xian level skill, but will also get a chance to enter the Phantom Cave. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1219. Chapter 1219, The Greatest Treasure Among Treasures. Xian level bodybuilding technique. What? Hearing the last words of the great elder, everyone raised their heads in surprise. The Dakingshan spiritual array is the most precious treasure of the Vajra section. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the treasure of the mountain. It is precisely because of the spiritual array that the Vajra sect is prosperous today. The scene even has the potential to overwhelm many small sects around it. In the spiritual formation, very few people know that there is also a phantom cave inside. Compared to the spiritual formation, the Phantom Cave is one of the treasures of the Vajra section, the most precious treasure. Non-core disciples or candidates for the head of the sect are not allowed to enter. The Phantom Cave is a naturally formed cave hidden behind the huge broken jade in Daking Mountain. Even among the disciples of the Vajra sect, few people know what is inside the Phantom Cave. Situation, let alone its secret. It is the group of people in front of the Diamond sect who can be called the core group, who know the secret of the Phantom Cave. People who enter the Phantom Cave can improve their own cultivation talents. This is it's scary. Generally, the cave heaven paradise can improve a cultivator's cultivation level, or it can temporarily break through a certain cultivation bottleneck of a cultivator and achieve a breakthrough. However, the Phantom Cave can permanently improve a cultivator's cultivation talent. It's equivalent to directly transforming a person's spiritual root, although it will not upgrade a low-grade spiritual root to a mid-grade spiritual root. As long as it can be improved even a little bit, it is enough to make people who know this secret crazy. You know, the world is completely divided into 3, 6, or 9 levels based on each person's cultivation level, and a person's cultivation talent basically determines a person's future status. This is why the major sects are so keen on competing for talented disciples. After all, even a person with low-grade spiritual roots has the possibility of advancing to the Suanhui realm. With mid-grade spiritual roots, it is basically a certainty to advance to the true martial realm. And with high-grade spiritual roots, not only can he become a dominant Danwei realm expert in this life, there is still a glimmer of hope to unlock the Tianwei realm level. The reason why sects like Changjian Pavilion and Qingxia sect can control a county is because they each have Tianwei realm strong men sitting in their posts. The so-called geniuses are potential strong ones. Is synonymous with those who are sects. And the phantom cave of the Vajra sect is such a place that can produce geniuses. Moreover, I am afraid that this is the fundamental reason why the power of the sect has been growing over the years. This is because the senior officials of the Vajra sect are afraid that the secret will be passed on. Going outside, attracting the covetousness of foreign enemies, only a few dozen people can use the Phantom Cave. If the door of the Phantom Cave is completely open to face the thousands of disciples of the entire Vajra sect, I am afraid that the Vajra sect will not be able to reach the level of the Changjian Pavilion. It is not impossible for the sect. As for why the Phantom Cave has such a heaven-defying function, dozens of generations of heads of the Vajra sect cannot explain this reason. We can only determine intuitively that the magical function of the Phantom Cave must be related to it has something to do with the piece of broken jade that is 100 feet high on Daking Mountain. From a hidden and uninhabited hill in the Vajra Gate, a plume of green smoke rose precariously. Under the green smoke, Suchen was holding a large piece of flaming stone beef and grilling it on the bonfire. From time to time, he would brush the large piece of meat with some delicious condiments. Having just reached the 9th level of Qi martial arts, Suchen did not rush to improve his cultivation level again. Instead, he turned to flaming stone beef and took the opportunity to improve the dragon elephant prajna kung fu to see if he could break through to the 2nd level as soon as possible, so that he would have the capital to resist breaking through to the 10th level of Qi martial arts. As for breaking through to the Suanwei realm, thinking of this, Suchen looked worried. After practicing Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu until now, he also has a certain understanding of this technique. This is just a yellow level skill. Because of Suchen's special physique, he has the body refining effect that can be called a monster now. But now, this level has reached the limit of this skill. Even if it reaches the final 3rd level in the future, it is still far from enough to withstand the impact of breaking through the Suanwei realm. More advanced Qian level body training techniques are in the Vajragate Sutra Pavilion, but he is not qualified enough to borrow them at the martial arts level. I heard that during the outer sect disciple competition, the top 3 will have a chance to receive a Qian level skill. Suchen flipped the barbecue, thoughtfully in his heart. He had long chosen the fragment scroll technique as the main method for cultivating spiritual energy. This could not be changed, and he did not want to change it. It can be used to choose a Qian level bodybuilding technique. However, this requires him to get the top 3 rankings in the outer disciple competition half a year later. Top 3, Suchen murmured, there's still half a year left. I must win the top 3. Suchen's eyes were firm and he was determined to win. There are no years of cultivation, and a month has passed in the blink of an eye. What Suchen didn't expect was that the energy contained in the flesh of the flaming stone bull monster was actually so huge. It took more than 20 days for a mere flaming stone cow to completely digest it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1220. Chapter 1220, Accept the Mission. 8-eyed Phantom Spider. The Fallen Woodflower Demon. You know, in the past, a 1-star mid-level monster saw-toothed porcupine could be completely digested in a day or two. I didn't expect that the flaming stone bull and the serrated porcupine are so different from the same 1-star monster. It seems that the 1-star mid-level monster is the weakest, and is completely different from the king of 1-star high-level monsters. Although the 2nd level of Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu has not yet been reached, Suchen feels that with the meat of 2 or 3 flaming stone cows providing the energy needed for bodybuilding, Breaking through to the second level is just around the corner. Something happened. When you break through the second level of Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu, it's time to continue to upgrade your cultivation to the 10th level of Qi martial arts. Suchen has already planned the way to go. After spending several days preparing, Suchen returned to the Foreign Affairs Hall to receive the task. I haven't seen you for more than a month, but the Foreign Affairs Hall is still crowded with people. Suchen walked straight to the taskbar hanging high in the hall and browsed various tasks. Many people recognized Suchen, the newly rising outer sect disciple, including Lu Shan, the steward of the Foreign Affairs Hall. A month later, Lu Shan still had fresh memories of the young man in front of him. It's hard not to remember someone who can carry a 2,000-pound flaming stone bowl into the Foreign Affairs Hall. Not to mention that before this young man also knocked down an uncle who was in the Suanwi realm. Nephew, yeah, I wonder what mission you want to receive today. Lu Shan's round and fat face was full of admiration for this young man. Suchen nodded politely, looked at the tasks at the top of the taskbar, and asked, "Can you provide me with the information on the top 3 tasks?" The first 3 tasks in the task column are marked that only Suanwi realm disciples can do it, but with Suchen's current strength, he can do it. Lu Shan smiled broadly. The third task is to obtain a 1,000-year cold weapon. Ice Jade. This jade is not the jade that ordinary people know. Its essence is the body of a 2-star mid-level monster, the Tianhan giant python, after its death. It is said that some people have seen it in Juying Valley. It is just because the ice jade is in the lair of a group of 1-star high-level monsters that it cannot be taken. Arrive. If this task can be completed, it can be counted as 1,000 contribution points. The second mission is a bit difficult, but with your strength, you still have a chance to complete it. Like the flaming stone bowl you resisted last time, it also belongs to the king of 1-star high-level monsters, the 8-eyed phantom spider. The mission requirement is to obtain the eyes of the 8-eyed phantom spider. Each eye of the 8-eyed phantom spider is worth 500 contribution points. The more the number, the more contribution points you will get. But Master Nephew, yeah, don't be careless. The 8-eyed magic spider is different from the flaming stone bowl that is famous for its destructive power and defense. As the name suggests, the most powerful magic of the 8-eyed phantom spider is illusion. Several Suanwi realm disciples have fallen into this illusion in the past, and there are even second-level Suanwi realm disciples who have stayed in Juying Valley forever. Suchen nodded. He had also heard about the power of the 8-eyed phantom spider. He made a rough estimate in his mind and felt that this mission could still be attempted. As for the first task, Lu Shan frowned slightly and said, "I advise you not to accept this mission. Many Vajra sect disciples have lost their lives because of this mission, and each of them is considered an elite among the inner disciples. If one more person dies, it is the Vajra sect's loss." Moreover, Master Nephew Yes' talent is astonishing and his future prospects are unlimited. There is really no need to take risks on this task. Lu Shan's words aroused Suchen's curiosity. He smiled and said, "Thank you, manager, for looking after me. But I still want to know the information about this mission. If the mission is too difficult, I won't hit the wall." The stunned Qing turned around. Su Chen's words made Lu Shan laugh out loud. "I didn't expect you to be quite funny when you talk. Okay, let me tell you about this mission. It turns out that in the center of Juying Valley, there is a 2-star high-level monster whose strength has been greatly reduced, the Luomu Flower Demon. If it were an ordinary fallen wood flower demon, even if an elder in the late Suanwi realm encountered it, he would have to take a detour. However, I don't know who hit me, but this fallen wood flower demon happened to be in the stage of turning into wood. The so-called wood turning stage is a unique evolutionary period for monsters like the Luomuhueo. Falling wood flower monsters are different from ordinary monsters. They are somewhere between tree monsters and monsters. It is usually in the state of a monster, but when its own monster power accumulates to a certain level and is about to be promoted to a higher level monster, its body will gradually become rigid and become a tree demon, shrinking its monster power, as if falling into hibernation, and at the same time, its strength will be greatly reduced. However, the so-called reduction in strength is also relative. The fallen wood flower demon that transformed into the form of a tree demon is more than 70% less powerful than it usually is, but it is still much stronger than the ordinary 2-star low-level demon beasts. Like the flaming stone bull that Suchen killed, even if it encounters the fallen wood flower demon in the form of a tree demon, it has no choice but to become food. However, once this period of dormancy is over, the Luomu flower demon will be able to advance smoothly. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1221. Chapter 1221 Enter Juying Valley again. 1-star high-level monster Tianhan Python. The falling wood flower demon that Manager Lu was talking about was probably between the 2-star intermediate level and the 2-star high level. Once it completes hibernation, it will immediately become a 2-star high-level monster. A 2-star high-level monster. Although Suchen was not afraid of 1-star high-level monsters, if he encountered a 2-star monster randomly, he would have to run away immediately, let alone the strongest of the 2-star monsters, the Luomu flower monster. If he is unlucky and is lightly scratched by the fallen wood flower demon, he will be instantly wiped out. It seems that this task is indeed difficult. Suchen frowned slightly. But before Lu Shan could feel relieved, Suchen continued to say. But I still want to take on this task first. What if the blind cat encounters a dead mouse and picks up a fallen tree flower demon for nothing? Lu Shan was obviously stunned for a moment, then shook his head and sighed. Young man, I have met many people who have the same idea as you, but there are not many who can return to the sect wholeheartedly. Are you sure you want to take on this mission? Sure. Suchen's voice was very soft, but his tone was particularly firm. Okay. Impulsivity is a shortcoming of you young people, but it is also an advantage. I will no longer advise you. I will register your name, etc. Before Lu Shan finished speaking, Suchen interrupted with a smile. It's not this one task, it's these 3 tasks. I took them all. Lu Shan was stunned for a while, and suddenly felt that this young man was really interesting. He stopped talking and registered Suchen's name in 3 tasks with 3 strokes and 2 strokes. Nephew yet. Lu Shan suddenly called out to Suchen, who was about to leave, looked at this maverick young man with interest, and said. Before you, there were 3 outer disciples who also took on the task of Luomu flower demon. Of course, these 3 disciples are by no means just ordinary people. So, this task may be more difficult for you, haha. Outer disciple, Suchen frowned and left the Foreign Affairs Hall. He came to the Vajra gate for too short a time. He usually practiced life-threateningly by himself when he had time. He didn't interact with many people. But he can be called a non-competent person in front of him. The people are probably the top 10 among the outer disciples. However, who are these 3 people? Tianji Yun, who is ranked 7th. Or Huang Xiniu, who is ranked 4th. Han Chuang, who is ranked 2nd. Or maybe it is, Zhang Sushan ranked 1st. Juying Valley is a vast forest with few people. It seems to be a secluded place, but in the deepest place, a low roar or a shrill cry like a baby's cry is heard from time to time. I don't know what kind of ghost or beast it is, and it's frightening to hear. This is the 3rd time Suchen has come here. He took a deep breath of the wild air here. Instead of feeling depressed or nervous, his spiritual energy was eager to try. There is quite a passionate and heroic feeling that he wants to start a bloody battle immediately. Perhaps, he is destined to fight for the rest of his life. With the dragon's footwork that he has become more and more comfortable with, Suchen easily shuttles between the ancient trees and vines. From time to time, he is destined to fight. Suddenly thrust out a sword in the blind corner of his sight, and in the next second, a demonic beast without eyes would be killed by him. The 1,000-year-old ice jade transformed into the 2-star mid-level monster Tianhan Python. Manager Lu did not mention the specific location, but it should be in the coldest place in Juying Valley. Then, there is only one place. Among the 3 tasks, the third task is the simplest. Although Hanbing Jade is guarded by a group of 1-star high-level monsters, he is not afraid of the king among the 1-star high-level monsters, let alone ordinary 1-star monsters. The star-level monsters are here. Kill them one by one, or kill them all in a group. Although the Juying Valley is called a valley, it is very large in scope. There are also hills and mountains in it, but generally speaking, it is a group of monsters. It's just a valley surrounded by mountains. The coldest place in the Juying Valley is none other than the tallest Mengshan Mountain in the north. Above Mengshan Mountain, there is a perennial cold fog, and the top of the mountain is covered with snow all year round. If an ordinary mortal falls into this place, no tea is allowed. If you try hard, it will freeze into a lump of ice. Only monks with spiritual protection can enter this mountain. However, although Mengshan is cold, there are many dangerous things hidden in the snow. Once a stranger's breath is discovered, they will definitely activate a fatal blow. Among them, snow worms, ice scorpions and cold weather pythons are the most vicious. Snow worms and ice scorpions are hidden in the thick snow all year round. Although their grades are not high, they are all 1-star mid-level monsters. But the toxicity is very strong. Even if a monk in the early stage of the Suanhui realm is accidentally bitten by them, without an antidote, he will be poisoned and die without even using a stick of incense. And the Tianhan Python is a 1-star high-level. Monsters are naturally stronger than ordinary 1-star monsters, but this is not the most dangerous thing about the Tianhan Python. The most dangerous thing about the Tianhan Python is that these monsters usually live in groups, and the number is usually 2 more than 10 items.